depths 40 stories high, breathing fire, his head in the sky, Godzilla has returned to the big screen, and that's what we're going to be talking about in this episode of The Real Deal. Welcome back to The Man Attic. I'm Kevin Polly.
And I'm Brian Hatcher.
And of course, we're looking at the return of the Big G to the movie theaters. Hatcher, your thoughts? We just saw Godzilla. What were your thoughts in checking out this new flick?
Well, I certainly did enjoy the film. It is a return to the Toho style of a kaiju movie, and I getting to see it in 3D was certainly wonderful to see it. I know some people have, there've been some talk about the pacing of the film, and I think it's something we certainly need to address.
Sure.
We'll address today. But all in all, I really did enjoy it.
I'm going to agree. Seeing it in 3D, I thought the 3D was actually pretty nice. I don't think it's a deal breaker if you see it in 3D or not.
Yeah.
Obviously, the action is very intense and very cool when it gets there. Now, there has been that comment made about the idea of the pacing of the film. Now, if you think about it, though, if you go back and watch the original Godzilla films, you'll notice that it usually takes that slow burn time to get to where we finally get the reveal of the monster that he's fighting, and then, of course, Godzilla himself. Big fight ensues, Godzilla returns to the sea, roll credits. That's pretty much what you're getting with this film, which honestly feels like a direct sequel to the original Gojira from the 1950s. I really thought that going into it, and upon seeing it, I still agree with that. That's pretty much what it felt like they were doing.
Yeah, I do have to say about the pacing is, honestly, I think people who complain about the pacing are really complaining about something else that they haven't quite put their finger on. And this is going to go a little bit into spoiler territory.
Yeah, definitely spoiler territory.
So, but I think, and I certainly don't have a problem with slow burn. I do like it. But I think what the problem that people are having with this movie is there is a discordant note in the screenplay that I think is what people are kind of keying into, and they're calling it the pacing. And that note is the death of Bryan Cranston's character.
Yes, I would agree.
The problem with it, and I'm not saying that certain things have to happen in a movie at a certain time.
No.
But I'm also not saying that you can't kill off who you think is your main character.
Sure.
Psycho is a really good example of what happens when you kind of twist the audience's expectation. The problem is Bryan Cranston's character does not really die for a good reason. That doesn't serve the story.
And also his death is very, it's very distant. It's very impersonal. When it happens, there's an attack. He is killed. Basically, he's killed in the attack. He's found, but let's be honest, it's basically when he dies. And because it's done in such an odd, distant way, and I think distant is a word that will keep coming up in this film. And it's something that I didn't mind as much because I knew who the director was going into it, and I had seen his previous film, Monsters, and there is that sense of distance in that film. And when I say distance, what I mean is we don't always see the fight scenes up close. We don't get to see them, like when they're happening, we'll cut away to something else, and we'll cut away to like a TV that's showing the fight, but we don't get to see it in its big, full glory. And I truly believe that's where a lot of people have had complaints. Now, I didn't mind it. I thought it was an interesting way to tell the story, and where I had seen Monsters, I was kind of expecting that, honestly. And I think Gareth Edwards is a great director, and he has a great style. But what people were wanting from this film was giant Godzilla versus monster destruction. Now, don't get me wrong. When it happens, I thought it was very impressive. I really did.
Oh, absolutely.
Godzilla is a total stud in this film, and the creatures are very interesting. But I think what they were wanting was just more of that, because what a lot of people I think have had to complain about is that slow burn. They're like, why do we have to wait so long to see Godzilla? And in the 1950s and 60s, of course, it was still new, and people didn't quite know what he looked like, and it was a different thing. But with this, through the promotion, you've seen what he looks like. Through the poster, you've seen what he looks like. So there's no surprise to what he looks like. So I think a lot of people have been in the mindset of, why wait so long? You already know what he looks like. Just get him out there and let him start stomping. And I understand that complaint, and it's a valid one.
Yeah, but going back to the death of Bryan Cranston's character, I think the reason I have a problem with it, and I'm not saying that it shouldn't have happened, but it did happen a little bit too soon in the movie.
I would agree with that. I think it would have been nice to have him at least make it to the mainland.
And since the son is going to be the main character, this death has to affect him in a really personal way. And I'm not saying that it didn't really matter, but there's nothing really that happens in the movie that would not have happened if Bryan Cranston's character hadn't died.
I agree completely. And when you look at the marketing of the film, I think a lot of people who are fans of his, and he really has become such a big name here in the past couple of years. Breaking Bad just really reinvented him to audiences.
Yeah.
He was no longer the dad from Malcolm in the Middle. And of course, he's done some great work, from Drive and other stuff as well. He's a really solid actor.
Which is why I say that his death would have meant a heck of a lot more on the screen, and would have been a great impact into the audience. If it just didn't seem like his death was because, well, we're done with this character and we need to get rid of him.
Right. And there are definitely things you can look at in this film, as you can look at from any Godzilla film. Let's be honest, it's not Shakespeare.
True.
But you can look at a lot of different things in the film and be like, boy, it just seems like that kick-ass himself, Aaron Taylor Johnson, who plays Cranston's son, that wherever he goes, it's like Godzilla's after him, or the Mutos are after him, because he's just always in the wrong place at the right time, basically. Mm-hmm. And that's fine. And he does a serviceable job with what he has. He's just not given a whole lot to do other than just be the action guy who gets us from scene to scene to scene to scene to scene.
Right.
There's not a whole lot there. Now, his moments with Bryan Cranston are actually genuinely engrossing. And his moments with his family are engrossing.
Yes.
And they should have had more build-up with that. To me, that would have been if you're going to have all this downtime, basically, in between monster fights, give us something even more to care about.
Oh.
I'm not saying, I'm not dissing the film. I agree. I think it's a very good movie, and it's definitely a fun summer flick. It's just there's a level of seriousness in the film, and if you're going to do that, that's fine. But you've got to give us characters that match that tone, and we don't have enough time with those characters to really get that across.
That's true, and you can't help but compare Godzilla to Pacific Rim.
Oh, sure. Which was like my favorite film of last summer. I say that with zero hesitation. And when you've seen Pacific Rim, it delivers on the goods. It shows you fights right out of the gates, man. I mean, there's no hiding.
Yeah, but I guess that's the difference. I mean, Guillermo del Toro, he has a great deal of experience that, we have a younger director who isn't quite there yet. And I think he can get there.
Oh, absolutely. Monsters even showed that he's got chops. And if you've not seen Monsters, I recommend it. It's a slow burn. There's not a whole lot of the monsters, so to speak. But when they do show up, it's very impressive.
But again, in a sense, I think for all that Pacific Rim owes to those kaiju movies like Godzilla,
yeah, sure.
It's almost an unfair comparison because, Guillermo del Toro, he is a visionary he's really
definitely got experience.
And so, but but Godzilla, it has the seeds to that. But besides the weaknesses of, I think, a director who's finding his voice.
Sure.
In a screenplay, that there are little things that could have been tweaked to make it stronger. I still think Godzilla was a solid film and certainly worth a watch.
It's definitely worth a watch for a summer film, and it's going to make tons of money. I mean, it already has over the weekend. It's definitely going to, I'm sure it could spawn a new franchise, and I hope that we do get to see that.
Yes.
Because I will say this, Godzilla is fantastic. When you see him on screen, he takes up space, man. I mean, this guy is larger than he's ever been. And the thing I liked about Godzilla and the Mutos, which are the beasts that he fights in this film, they definitely have that size and scale that you saw in Pacific Rim. Right. That they don't move super fast and run like the Godzilla films of old, because it's a man in a suit, he can move pretty quick.
Right.
No, this thing has mass and size, and when he steps, it's there's something behind it. There's definitely levels of destruction here that I know that the older films definitely were trying for, but limited technology, you can only do so much. With this, they get to unleash the full power of what computer-generated effects can do, and do them very convincingly. I will also add that. Godzilla and the Mutos always look very realistic in the space they're given. I also like the fact that Godzilla has character. You can see in his face sometimes sort of what he's thinking, and you can hear it in that roar, that he's angry. And I also like the fact that in this, more so than even in the Godzilla films of old, is that the creatures are just that. They are creatures. You could even dare say, as I mentioned in the film, Godzilla is himself sort of a force of nature. What they are not are just monsters. Even the Mutos are villains of the piece. Are still. I thought it was very touching that you have a male and a female, and they finally meet, and there's this like nuzzling moment between them, and there's like a genuine like emotional connection between the two of them, and of course the mother has all these eggs, and when they blow up, I mean, you can see the hurt and rage in her. Very reminiscent of like the Alien Queen in Aliens when Ripley's shooting up all of her eggs, and you can see the fury. These are my children. These are my babies. What are you doing? And I really thought that was an interesting take. I mean, I like the fact that they weren't just monsters for the sake of monsters. They were creatures that had, you know, purpose, that had desires like all creatures do. And I thought that was very interesting.
Survival and reproduction. I mean, it's
the basic concept. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. And I will also say this: when they have their throwdown with Godzilla, it's pretty exhilarating. There are definitely some fist pump and clapping moments in this movie. Seeing it in a room full of people, when you finally see Godzilla's breath. That was a total geek out moment. I literally I threw the fist up for that. And you even get to see him use that tail to good purpose as well. I just wish there was more of it. And I will say that the finale between him and the final creature is there's a, let's just say, a blast that made a lot of people be like, oh, that just happened. It's definitely, I mean, like, it definitely has its action. Now, I've seen people online making the comparison to Man of Steel as far as the level of destruction, and I heard people say like, "Well, why did you complain about Man of Steel, but you don't complain about Godzilla?" And I will say this: in Godzilla, there is destruction. There is a lot of destruction, and I would definitely say it's on par with the amount you see in Man of Steel. The difference is in Godzilla, you know, we expect Superman to save us. We expect Godzilla to break things up. We expect him to stomp and knock down buildings. You also see, of course, evacuation plans happening, and Godzilla is not there to be the villain. He is the savior, sort of this piece. I do like the fact that he's like nature's checks and balance system. And I kind of dig that. But and in the Toho films, he would switch between villain and savior. And in this film, they definitely got him in savior mode, and I hope that's sort of the tone they go with him for if they do build a franchise around it. Is there violence? Yes. Is there destruction? Yes. But it's never like, I guess I can say it's never as excessive as it felt in Man of Steel. And I think with Man of Steel, it's just like, Superman, why is all this stuff happening around you? Why won't you get away from this? And Godzilla, it's like, we kind of get it. He has to be there. It's where the creatures are. He's got to go in and clean house. And again, he is that sort of force of nature. But again, you expect it from a Godzilla film. Everything in Godzilla's history shows us that buildings are going to get smashed, that any vehicles or tanks in the way are going to get crushed. It's going to happen. So really no surprises there. But I will say, even the deaths of people and even the creatures, it's a pretty bloodless film, really. I don't remember any real genuine gore, to be honest.
No, there isn't. And of course, you don't get that in the original Godzilla movies.
No, you don't.
Because you really don't need it.
No, not at all. You've got giant creatures, and that's really all you need. And again, the spectacle is definitely there. I will say one of my favorite moments is when the main character's son is watching the footage at home of the fight, and it looks like he's watching a Godzilla movie on TV because he's watching Godzilla fight this creature, and it's done like I said, it reminds you of when you were a kid watching Godzilla movies on a Saturday. That made me laugh, and there is definitely some humor in the film. It's not a humorless movie at all. Even like I said with Godzilla, there's some facial expressions he gives where you're just like, yeah, I can tell the boy's kind of winded. He's tired. He just wants to get this done, But it definitely, the thing is, the film delivers on spectacle. I just wish there was more of it, and I think that's what most people are saying. It's what's there is great. I just wish there was more of it. But let's be honest, if you really think back to the original films, there's not all that much action in the originals either. It actually is very faithful, and my understanding is the folks at Toho truly gave the film its blessing. They were beyond excited about it.
Oh, absolutely, and I'm certainly eager to see more.
And I think we will see that. So, final thoughts. Do you recommend the film? What do you think?
Oh, I certainly do recommend the film. I mean, for the 2 or 3 missteps I saw in the screenplay, it's certainly a fun watch, and I enjoyed watching it, and I would certainly recommend other people to check it out.
Sure, and I would even say if people are wondering about the age range for this, I think like if you have 10-year-olds and stuff who have watched Godzilla films in the past, they kind of know what's going on. Especially if they'd seen Man of Steel, and if they liked it or had no problem with it, then they'll definitely have no problem with Godzilla. It's really, and if you have kids who like Pacific Rim, then I think they would also really dig this as well. It definitely has that old Toho feel, but again, it does have its seriousness. It's not as much of a message picture of the original when you're talking about so close to the bombing of Hiroshima, where that sort of still had an impact on the culture. It doesn't quite have the impact that original film had, but they're definitely going for something a little more serious than just a monster movie. Now, if you're just wanting a monster movie, though, you might be a little disappointed in the film. But I do think what they do give you is definitely worth the price. If it, at least a matinee, it's definitely worth the price of checking it out. So let us know in the comments below. What did you think of the return of Godzilla to the big screen? Was it everything you hoped for and more? Did you think it needed more Blue Oyster Cult? Or did you think it just needed more Godzuki? I don't know. Let us know what you think below. And as always, you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Google+. We'll have links to those below in the description. And again, let us know your thoughts. It's not only just did you like the film. What's your favorite Godzilla film? Destroy All Monsters, I think, was always my fave because you had so many different monsters in it, and Godzilla has to sort of run the gauntlet.
Oh yes,
of monsterdom, which is pretty awesome. Hatch, did you have any ones?
Mine has to be the first Godzilla movie I ever saw in a theater, which was Godzilla vs. Megalon.
Oh yeah.
I saw that in a theater in Beckley. Yep. So it was my first Godzilla film on the big screen. So, and that tells you how old I am. So there you go.
Well, anyway, now the first one I saw on the big screen was Godzilla 1985, which was just a very weak film, but it was a big deal for me as a kid to see Godzilla on the big screen. And I think if you have 10-year-olds who love Godzilla and monster movies, they will, I think, also find the joy in this. So again, let us know in the comments below what you think, and as always, don't forget to like and subscribe. And again, thanks for joining us, and we'll be back very soon with a look at X-Men Days of Future Past, as well as other films throughout the summer, and of course we'll also have some other stories along the way. Again, our top 5 blockbusters that should have been blockbusters, as well as looking at a deconstruction of certain films, including Man of Steel. So again, let the flame war begin.
Yeah.
But let us know in the comments below what you thought of Godzilla, and as always, thanks for joining us in the Mad Egg. Until next time, I'm Kevin Polly.
And I'm Brian Hatcher.
And this has been The Real Deal. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.